today on SMX Insider.
For the first time in 2025, here we go.
Jett Lawrence goes down.
And Deegan's down.
Oh my goodness.
Jett Lawrence is last. Joe Shimoda wins.
Chase
Sexton wins Anaheim. It's his first A1 win.
Sexton is saying bye-bye.
Yeah, welcome to SMX Insider. We are the Jasons, Wygant, and Thomas. To me, the first round of SuperMotocross this year at Anaheim, perfect, JT. We spend 3 months with a lot of questions, but I don't like it when we get all of the answers. We have 31 rounds or 17 rounds of Monster Energy AMA Supercross to sort this all out. We did learn that some guys have stepped up this year, and there's still some question marks. I kind of like it that way.
It was certainly not what everybody expected. And I'm going to take your word perfect. And I think that there might be some boys that wear red that might disagree with that statement, but that's what A1 is. It's almost always the unexpected is what you get. So for Jett and Hunter Lawrence to end up 11th and 12th, hey, that's A1 in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's what I like. So the favorites coming in, Hayden Deegan's got a hole to dig out of. Jett and Hunter Lawrence have a hole to dig out of. That's great. But what we did get answered, JT, who is going to step up this year? 450s. Pretty obvious that Chase Sexton and Eli Tomac are back at a very high level, higher than they were in 2024.
Yeah, a lot of the talk coming in was these 5 prior champions all back on form, and that's exactly what we saw. Now, some of them had issues, Tomac falls over, but all of them showed that they're going to be in this title fight. I'm not so worried about Jett kind of getting back to what the things that Jett does, but I really think it sets up nicely for all of 2025, all the way into September, for these guys to be back to their championship winning days.
Yes, and we have some news in the 250 class. Levi Kitchen out of the West, but we're seeing a Joe Shimoda and Julian Beaumer and other riders step up also, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult on Deegan. To me, this is perfect. Lots of competition. As for this show, we're going to get into all that racing. We're going to preview San Diego coming up round 2 this weekend and give you some behind-the-scenes things that you may or may not have even known happened at Anaheim 1, all today on SMX Insider. Big interview time, joined by a man who's won Anaheim many times in his career, 2-time Supercross champ, my hero growing up. I think the same thing for JT as well. The Ricky Johnson. We had you at hand at Anaheim. We'll talk to you about the race in a moment. But first, we saw you Thursday with the premiere of the Pay Dirt movie that should be streaming soon and in theaters as well. You were a big part of it. And it really focuses on the raw emotions of being one of these crazy motorcycle racers. What was that like to actually see that come back at you in person?
Well, it's been about 2 years since we filmed it, and they had my wife, Stephanie, come and we talked. I kind of bared my soul about, a lot of people don't know the behind the scenes, and it was great to hear the behind the scenes with Ricky and Jeannie and all the different things that go along with it. But I think Paul did a great job. It's so hard to grasp 50 years of Supercross and try to put the different pieces together. But I think they've done a great job showing the commitment and the tenacity and the bravery of these riders, and today showing the commitment and seeing how hard the McAdoo crash that one scares me. It scares me to watch it. But to know that he got up and actually rode after that, it just shows the commitment that these riders start with when they're just little guys.
So 2 questions here. One, can you give us a little bit of insight as you're watching Jett kind of go through the things you went through? And then secondary to that, if he was reaching out to you and asking for you for advice or guidance, where would you send him? Because I think your approach to how you handle those things is very different than the things we're seeing from him thus far.
And a lot of it, JT, is the environment with social media, with cell phone cameras, with people have access to you that they didn't have access to us before. I was talking to some of the dirt bike guys when we were at Malcolm Smith's funeral. We were talking about how we would wait after the race for the interview guys to come talk to us and get the information. And then it was done. Then I could go home and I could ride and I could do all the different stuff. If it were me and I was working with Jett, I would say I need to isolate you from the world. I mean, for one, get rid of your phone. Let's get you a flip phone so you can talk to people. You can't post. You can't do any of that stuff. He's at a level right now financially with stuff, meaning What more do you want? You want a Learjet, you want a yacht, you want this, you want that. There's that expense. But now, what does he do? And so when I did a different podcast, they said, who do you think is going to be the disappointment? And I said, Jett Lawrence, for this reason. If he didn't dominate everybody, basically, if he didn't do what Chase Sexton did, everybody was going to be down on him. And sure enough, look what happens. The bike's off a little bit. Him and Hunter both crashed in the same spot. They looked really nervous in the whoops. The power, I think it's a combination of power and suspension. So I'm giving you a long answer, JT. But what I would do is just say, let's go back and find that feeling that we had with the other bike and what we had last year, and start tearing away things that are new and go back to the old ways if you can.
Last year, Sexton was the one who didn't have the bike where he wanted, and he never really got it sorted. It took an entire year, basically, for him to get it. The Lawrences definitely aren't where they want to be. You've probably had years you could disguise it by still winning, but you had to have years where the bike was in a better place than others. How difficult is it to find it during the season and make those fixes really quickly?
It's a motocross bike. You're dealing with sand, you're dealing with whoops, you got to go down this turn, you got to enter the corner, flat corner, berm corner. You can't just make a bike one-dimensional. So you say, like for us, the Honda was light in the front. We tried a different skid plate, we tried a heavier axle, we tried all kinds of stuff to get more traction to make it feel more like a Cowie or a Yamaha. But in the sand at Daytona, nothing was going to touch my CR250. With the works, with the HRC pipe and the light front end, nobody was going to touch me there. And so you have to say, well, we're not strong here, but let's get third or fourth. We're not strong here, let's race for 10th place. That can't be. How can a setup go from Chase Sexton going from last place to first place at Hangtown and then racing around for 8th place in Colorado? How does the setup change that much? It changes here. When you're uncomfortable, you got to go. Now, I want to defend the current riders versus us. The performance of the tire is like this. It's really sharp. The performance of the fuel injection, the power, everything is like this. Our power, we had to use the clutch and we had to do all these things. We had a carburetor, we had a power valve and all these different things. So you were masking something all the time. Now these guys are looking for 10/10ths all the time, and I think you need to make a bike more rideable, and that's why we see really good, really bad.
Awesome bench racing as always, RJ. We'll get you on again. We love it. 30-second board. Here are topics coming out of Anaheim 1. Like we said, some things you may or may not have even realized happened long before the racing took place on Friday. The partnership is announced. Troy Lee Designs will be running the forthcoming Ducati factory racing team in the United States. We anticipate that will probably start in 2026. Maybe we get a glimpse later in 2025, but just some solidity there of we've been mysterious on this Ducati thing. We got answers now.
Yeah, and that bike was nothing less than beautiful. And it's just another brand. We saw the success of Triumph joining Monster Energy Supercross and, of course, Pro Motocross as part of SMX. Ducati's on the way. And if you look at their other forms of racing and the dominance that they've had there, it's hard to think that they're not going to be competitive fairly quickly. Saw Tony Cairoli, 9-time world champion, walking around the pits. He was a member of Pro Motocross not so long ago. So let's see if we can get some glimpses of Tony here this summer.
I think that's what Ducati wants to do. I think they want to race a couple of Pro Motocross races late in the year. They say this bike will be on sale for consumers by July, but they've got to clear all the AMA homologation production hurdles, and they don't know if they're going to be able to do that, so they can't announce it. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cairoli and a Ducati on track in 2025, which would be awesome. And who rides for him next year? Oh, that's going to be a spicy meatball. I guess Italian style there. Also on Thursday, Pay Dirt. We got to attend the premiere of The Story of Supercross. It's a documentary film, and I enjoyed it. I think it's especially, JT, important if you're not a hardcore Supercross fan. This is a great primer to pull you in.
Yeah, and I think there are so many people out there that are getting exposure to it. You think about when these races play on NBC, whether it's a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon, just by happenstance, new fans are going to be built through that. So for them to be able to go back, watch Pay Dirt, learn the history of the sport, and most importantly, the human element of this sport. And you learn some of the trials and tribulations of our former champions and how this sport came to be. I think it gives a really nice foundation for these people to take that knowledge and move forward. And into the next decade, they can really follow along this sport with the history side of it, now learned from that movie Pay Dirt.
Yeah, so look for it in theaters soon and streaming, I'm sure, as well. Just keep that name in mind, Pay Dirt, and then you'll find a place where you'll be able to watch it. Really well done. You mentioned when we said Ducati, the success of Triumph, who debuted in racing here in the United States last year, and another big milestone for them in Anaheim.
Yeah, we felt like it was so close. Jalek Swoll was right in the fight there in Philadelphia last year. Well, Jordan Smith makes good on it here in 2025. You can see the celebration and what it meant to that team for him to be up there. And I truly believe this is just the start. It's the tip of the iceberg for the success that Triumph is going to have. I do think there's a really strong chance that they win a main event in 2025. And I've said it from day one, I am blown away at the immediate success that this team has had against the ultra competitive 250s that have been developed over the last 20 years. So kudos to all them. It's just another milestone, like you said, and I think it's one of many more that they're going to have in short succession as well.
Yeah, when you take a rider like Jordan Smith on the mighty Yamaha Star Racing squad, and he rides about the same when switching to Triumph, that speaks volumes. But I want to move to the next topic. Look, the 450s are going to take the majority of the limelight, and congrats to Chase Sexton on getting the win. That's awesome. But Joe Shimoda, who has been labeled as the slowest starter season-wise, championship-wise in this sport, always known for getting on the back foot, winning round one, that is a massive takeaway for me. It's not going to be 450 level headline, but to me, it's one of the biggest stories.
But that label was appropriate. The data, Clinton Fowler, if he was on this segment, would tell you all the reasons we said
absolutely.
that bear out if you just look at the numbers. So I think that we all have to look at it and say there was a reason that we made those conclusions. He was going to start slow and try to kind of catch up as we went along. This changes the script entirely. So now immediately he's in the fight. And if he can progress from here, which is it's harder to do when you're winning races, feels like there's only one way to go from here. But at least it sets him up for a chance to be championship relevant because it's been the same story year in and year out. Yes, Joe Shimoda can win races, but by the time he figures out how to do so in that particular series, he's 40 points down. So we'll see where he goes from here. Can he handle the pressure of running around with red plates? Does it change anything in his racing? Or is this really the catalyst that he needed to really find his stride and go on and win these championships?
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely the data pointed to he starts the season too slow. Now he wins round one. That flipping of the script that you mentioned, you love those kind of stories to come out of the opener. It's a real head scratcher where it goes from here. And that 250 West was already turned on its head when Levi Kitchen elected not to race. Now, JT, we know there's conspiracy theories out there that Kitchen was afraid of Hayden Deegan, and that's why he scratched at the last minute. But I say, well, he could have done that a month ago when Deegan said he was going to race West. I went over to the Pro Circuit pit. They even had him pitting out of a separate van to keep whatever illness he had away from the rest of the staff and his teammate Garrett Marchbank. So there's definitely an illness there, but this is not what we expected at all.
Yeah, I simply just don't buy that theory at all. And, Hayden Deegan leans into it and he's taking shots at Levi Kitchen and all those things. Heard the comments from RJ Hampshire that he heard rumors he was going to make a switch. That's fine. But when you look at the 250 East series that Levi has to go sign up for now, that's not a picnic. That's not like an easy way out to go race Vial and Hampshire. And there's multiple factory riders from multiple teams on the East now. And Hayden Deegan is going to be left to his own devices, even with a fifth on the West. So I just don't think logically you can make that jump to say that Levi Kitchen took the easy way out here. So it's unfortunate. It definitely was a bummer for the West Series as far as engagement and all those things. But at the same time, Deegan didn't have a good race. So maybe he's going to have his hands full with the likes of Beaumare and Shimoda and all these other guys, Jordan Smith, that maybe we undersold the challenge that he's going to have with them anyway.
Time for the SMX medical update. We bring Dr. Joe McGinley who was at the race at Anaheim, had the McGinley Privateer Support Program on hand. That looked good. Almost got a couple guys in the main. We'll talk about that more throughout the year. But the medical topic for this week, Achilles injuries. What is going on here? This used to be rare. Jalek Swoll's out with an Achilles. Evan Ferry did his Achilles, I guess, in the heat race. Any idea, Dr. Joe, why this is suddenly becoming so widespread?
You know, it's interesting. This was the topic, a year or so ago when Eli Tomac hurt his. And then last year it was pretty quiet again. And now we're starting the season with 2 more injuries. Jalek Swoll, I believe he already had surgery. It sounds like Evan Ferry is going to need surgery. Those are major surgeries, so they're going to be out for quite a period of time. I don't expect either one will be back during the Supercross season. Evan said, I believe he landed off a jump awkwardly and then he felt the pop in his leg. That's pretty much the standard for that. Usually it's if you're not expecting a bump or injury when you're landing, that Achilles can pop. It's almost, if you think about it, it's like the rear suspension on your bike. It's the main support for the lower leg. And, if something happens and that suspension breaks, you can no longer support the back of that leg.
I thankfully never had this injury, but when you look at how prevalent it's been over the last few years, it makes you start to wonder, is this something where it's riding position or any of those things? But from your perspective, is it something that could be preventative or is it just a random occurrence?
Yeah, it's both. So if you have an injury or if you have some irritation of that Achilles, you're more prone to this type of injury and having it torn. Also, if you have it torn and had it surgically repaired, you're also at increased risk for a re-tear. So pre-existing problems with the Achilles will make it more likely to tear again. But, for some of the riders, it can be a first-time thing. Again, if you're not prepared for a hard landing or, even that landing's coming up and it's hard, but you mistime it just ever so slightly, there's a lot of force on that Achilles, and that's what can pop it. So those scenarios that can occur, and for sure, I'm not sure if either of these guys had injuries in the past, but if they did, that would obviously put them at risk for a tear of that tendon.
Better luck for Swoll and Ferry in the future. Thanks for the info, Dr. Joe. We'll catch up with you again next week. All right, back to the 30 board here. More news before the race started. On Friday, the announcement of the playoff locations for SMX and the World Final. Also, so we're back to ZMAX Dragway Charlotte, and we'll still have the World Championship finale in Las Vegas at the drag strip there. Those 2 races have been really well received. We're really looking for something special for round 2. And when you see St. Louis, a dome that's hosted Supercross before, you might think, well, that's good, but is it special? JT, I think when people see the track map, they're going to find out it's a lot different than a Supercross there.
Yeah, I think people were scratching their head, but when you really dive deep into the plan, where we're going to use these tunnels, which are going to open up to the convention center, that's going to allow us to have a more motocross type feel to it. There's also going to be sections where people can stand along the fence line that's going to feel like a pro motocross event too. So I think it's a home run. You talk to every single rider, and I'll throw myself into there even 12 years removed. St. Louis has some of the best, if not the best dirt around on the series, around the world. So to have a round there, you look at the struggles we had in Fort Worth with the dirt, this is a huge upgrade. And I commend everybody involved because this was thinking outside the box to go to St. Louis for a playoff round. I think it's going to be great. The weather, the track, the uniqueness of it, the hybrid factor where we're going to be able to do both things. I can't imagine how riders are not excited about this.
Yes, and it keeps intact. The idea has been with the 3 races we've had each year, you have one in the east, one in the center of the country, one in the west, and it keeps that intact as well with those 3 final races for the year. So that's cool. That's the end of the year. We got to go to the beginning here. Slow start. We mentioned Deegan had his problems, but that was really just a racing incident, just typical start chaos. He rode well. I don't think there's any panic button there. I want to dive deeper into the Lawrence brothers. That was not the Jett Lawrence, JT, that we're expected to see. He did throw down some heaters in qualifying, not fastest, but in the hunt, but otherwise not good. Hunter Lawrence, I thought was going to salvage a decent finish in the main, and then that fell away, and we end up with both Lawrences outside the top 10. What happened?
Well, this was the worst race of Jett Lawrence's career. I truly believe that. Now, has he had worse results or things? Maybe, but when you look at the overall, the way the day went, heat race, the bad starts, the challenges he had, and the eye test too, he just did not look very good. Now, I would say we shouldn't be shocked that they had some troubles here because there was a lot of talk and chatter coming out of November and December that they weren't necessarily happy with how the 2025 motorcycle is working in Supercross, which is crazy because if you look back at 2025 motocross, Hunter Lawrence came out on fire at Unadilla and it really sparked something for him. And then Jett, off an injury, was able to go out and win the SMX World Championship, those 3-round playoffs. So it's amazing to me that the bike is so much different outdoors than it is indoors. Now, Honda has a big challenge in front of them. They've got a few days to really take some big steps. And I don't know that they can, because when you think about they've had, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of testing to take those steps and they couldn't, why would we magically assume that they're going to take this giant step in a couple of days? So the challenge for them is pretty clear. I just don't know that the solution is anywhere near as clear as the challenge is.
Yeah, that is the other side of the coin for sure. So here's Chase Sexton, who was struggling with his motorcycle a year ago, but to his credit, he managed to salvage some good finishes and actually even led the points early in 2024 Monster Energy Supercross. He is clearly much better this year. Tomac rode awesome, even though he only finished 5th with a crash. Let's talk about the KTM folks specifically. Also, when you consider Juju getting 2nd in the 250 division, what a night for them.
Yeah, and what a difference a year makes. It's almost like Honda and KTM switched scripts from last year to this year. Last year, everybody was talking about Chase Sexton. Could he get comfortable on the KTM? He told us in December of 2023 how challenging it was to get used to the bike. He didn't feel comfortable yet. That seems like the situation that Honda's in, and now KTM looks like they have everything figured out. Sexton really couldn't put a foot wrong other than one stall that wasn't even really a mistake. He just stalled it. It's not like he fell over. Otherwise, amazing night by Sexton. Starts, picture-perfect laps, had the pace to once again pull away from Ken Roczen after the stall. And then Juju on the 250, he's really emerging as a title contender in the 250 class in only his 2nd year. So the future's incredibly bright for KTM. And I'm just so amazed at how quickly the fates and the storylines can turn, because just when it seemed like Honda had everything going their way, like perfect setup, perfect riders, perfect everything, now it looks like KTM has all of that momentum in just one weekend.
So Sexton gets the win. He kind of made me laugh. He said he's old now. He's 25. He said he's embarrassed to say that he's 25 years old. JT, that is nothing in modern racing parlance. 30 plus has proven to be still relatively young, because look at the other guys right behind him. Roczen's now 30. Anderson is over 30. Tomac rode well. Cooper Webb is actually younger than them. He's not 30 yet. We just keep getting this reminder every year that late 20s, early 30s doesn't really make a difference. You're still competitive.
Yeah, if this was 1992, Chase Sexton would be signing up for his AARP card, but not in modern day racing. These guys have proven that you can be competitive into your 30s. Look at guys like Justin Brayton. You can do it. You know, modern technology and science and what we know about the human body has extended the performance period for racers, bar none. And this weekend was a testament to that. Those riders, the Eli Tomacs, Cooper Webb's not there yet, but he's getting there. Ken Roczen. These riders are all over 30, and I would argue they've never looked better. So it's amazing when we can have talent like Jett Lawrence at 21 years old. We can have Chase Sexton kind of in that middling ground, but then we have these prior champions over 30, Jason Anderson, of course, too, that look like they're on their best form of their life, and there's a 10-plus year age gap ranging those guys.
Yeah, you're in a pretty good spot for the series when a superstar like Ken Roczen is someone that people aren't even thinking about coming in, because there's so many other riders to think about. And then you're like, oh yeah, Ken Roczen's still here, still capable, still good. He would have been long gone in a previous generation. So that's a nice bonus. Speaking of bonuses, we'll get into our next bets information for this weekend in San Diego. Go to nextbets.com for the info for the race. But let's get the experts, James Stewart and Clinton Fowler, with some ideas for round 2.
All righty, James. Round 1 is done and in the books. Chase Sexton takes home the victory. And anybody that put down $100 on Chase Sexton with 363 odds just took home $363 in profit. Not a bad night for those that picked the number 4 to go out there and take the victory. James, what'd you see from Chase Sexton at Anaheim?
I saw the same thing I saw from Chase Sexton a couple weeks prior. and that was a rider that looked good. He looked like he was doing it easy. Only time that I saw him kind of getting out of it was when he was chasing down that fast lap time in practice. It seems like he's not quite back to the Honda speed, that all-out speed. He's just below it, but he's a lot more consistent. And when you look at him, even compared to Eli, who looked really good all day long, even Jett, he had pace. Chase just looked like he could do that every lap. And that's the same thing I saw when he was at the house, routing at the house. He just consistent. Maybe if they're doing, 1 minute flats, Chase might be doing 1:0, minute half, like a half second slower, but he just do it all the time. And I saw a rider that had a lot of confidence coming into it and way more confidence going after. So that number 4 looked great this weekend.
We'll have to see how he does in San Diego, where he won his first career race. But the last 2 years at Snapdragon Stadium, he's only finished 5th and 8th. Anyhow, James, let's talk about Aaron Plessinger. The odds makers got him at 22.81, an incredible long shot if you really look at it. But he won here last year, an incredible fan favorite victory. What do you think for Aaron Plessinger's chances this weekend?
Well, considering what we saw last year and how good Aaron was riding and the fact that he won here, you would think the odds makers would be crazy, but they got it pretty spot on because Aaron was a no-show last weekend. You not even really noticed that he was there. And when you consider how good Chase looked, how good Aaron looked, is it, everybody else has gotten better and that's where he belongs? Or did Aaron have an off weekend? Any rider that shows up at a place that he's won, he's going to feel good. So I expect Aaron to be a lot better than he was last weekend at Anaheim. But to pick him, I think he's a long shot. Hopefully, I love some Aaron Plessinger, just as you do. Hopefully this weekend he bounces back and gets up there.
Yeah, James, I'm with you. Definite fan favorite. Hey, there's one thing that might not get onto people's radar. Cooper Webb, he's gotten second in each of the last two visits here to Snapdragon Stadium. He was hunting down Eli Tomac 2 years ago. Last year, he was coming for Aaron Plessinger, so he's not been able to make it happen. But what do you think it is about this stadium? He does well. He's been on the podium twice.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily about the stadium or it's just Cooper Webb. Whenever he's up near the front, it's Cooper Webb, whether he's won there before or DNF. When that dude smells victory, he just rises up. So I think Cooper rode good last weekend. I figured that's kind of where I wouldn't say belonged, but I wasn't shocked that he ended up where he was. And if he gets the same kind of start, I could see the same results. But I also can see Cooper Webb being 10 minutes left. He's second, only a few seconds behind the leader. Cooper Webb will come out, and then it looks good at that 650 for you to win. So I still think right now Jett has to bounce back this weekend. I would still almost pick him as a favorite to win this weekend, but you never know. Just keep your eye on those odds, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Well, James, the odds makers agree with you. They still got him as the favorite, regardless of the fact that he finished outside the top 10 last weekend. And as you know, in 2009, that first round doesn't matter. You can still go out and win the title. So, James, we're headed to Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego this weekend. Can't wait.
Absolutely. Good luck.
Okay, and one more topic before we head to San Diego, and that's the track there itself. What do you see on the track map?
Well, last weekend was a very strange, atypical track. This is much more the norm, what riders are going to expect, what they would practice on during the week. A couple of important things here. Last week we had a myriad of 180s. This is going to be less. There are a few more 90-degree corners, which is going to make passing a little bit more difficult. But the one section there on our left of the screen, the whoops, before and after, there are 180s leading in and leading out, and that is going to set up block passing for most of the riders. So whether they have to build momentum and try to make the pass through the whoops and set up the pass going into the next corner, or however they want to do it, working all the way around this racetrack, that is going to be the spot that every single rider knows is a chance to make a move. So I think the riders will be comfortable here. Immediately, they're going to find some familiarity with this racetrack, but it is a far separation from what we saw in A1.
Time for SMX Facts. We bring in our staff statistician, Clinton Fowler, as always. I think the easy trivia coming out of Anaheim 1 is, the defending champ only got 12th. What's it like to try to come back? So you've got some stats proving that there have been worse round ones for a rider that did go on to win the title.
Indeed, Weege. And man, what a rough night for Jett Lawrence. Worst finish in his career in the Premier class, including Pro Motocross. But it's not the end of the world. We've got 3 examples of guys that have finished outside the top 10 and still won the championship. So you look at Ricky Carmichael in 2002, and man, if anybody has seen that race where he crashed at Anaheim 1, it's just absolutely brutal. He came back to win. James Stewart, 2009, same thing. And then the last one, Ryan Villapoto in 2013, he even lost his glove at Anaheim 1 in that race. The amazing part, JT, is these guys came back and they won a minimum of 10 races in each of those seasons. So the end of the world isn't here. What do you think? Do you think he's just going to rebound this weekend, or is this going to be a slow build, JT?
This really reminded me of the Ryan Villapoto in 2013 race. The James Stewart one for me was a little different because he and his rival Chad Reed went down in heat together. So the hole wasn't necessarily the kind of the same dynamic as for Jett, but I do think Jett has an opportunity to come back. We're so early in such a long series that nothing can really be determined yet. And then you couple that with how deep the field is. So you have to imagine that riders like Chase Sexton or whoever was at the front in this particular race, even Cooper Webb in a fourth, they're going to have middling races too, where not everything goes perfectly. And there will be opportunities, but you nailed it. The most important aspect of this is winning several races. I don't think it has to be 10, but it needs to be more than 6 or 7, I think, especially when you start in a hole. I do think for Jett to win, he's going to have to get on a run and win a bunch of races just like he did last season.
Now, on the other side of the coin, the 250 class, Joe Shimoda, that's only his second win, first of all. Am I right about that? Is that only his second win? And just dive into the data of that.
Yeah, we just third win for him. Absolutely incredible race for him.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, and man, I mean, he didn't necessarily show it in qualifying. He didn't necessarily show it in the heat race, but man, he came out. He got a great start in the main event. He set the fastest lap of the main event, which was the thing that really was surprising because he hadn't shown that speed earlier in the day. But JT, the thing here for me, I just think about a kid from Japan that moved over as a teenager. He's the first and only rider from Japan to win a Supercross race. But he comes over as a teenager, doesn't know the language. He's got to adapt not only from riding a bike here, but he's got to adapt culturally. And I just look at that, and you look at the strides he's made. This is clearly out of the norm for him. He's starting the season strong. Do you think he's going to keep this going, or guys like Deegan and Beaumaire going to end up having the advantage as we move forward?
Well, he has all the tools, and that's what's been so frustrating with him not starting quickly is the tools are there. You're never going to say those things about a rider where visually you can see deficiencies that are holding them back, or that don't have the talent or the equipment. That's really never been the case for Joe Shimoda. He finally stepped up and did what he's supposed to do early on, which is going to position him, whether he wins the championship or not, everything's in front of him now, where before he was doing so much damage to himself early on that it was almost an afterthought that the championship was kind of over with for him. And I think for Joe, I mentioned this on the broadcast, that he's always done, or he's kind of approached the race the same way. Once he gets going and he's out of trouble, he puts in picture perfect laps over and over and over. The problem is, if he's coming from 8th or 9th or 14th, those picture perfect laps are only good enough to get him up to 3rd or 4th by the end of the race. So when he gets out front, he clears that first lap, doesn't have an issue, he's gonna continue to put in those picture perfect laps, and he's gonna win the race. So just like Denver in 2024, give him a whole shot and get him away from all the traffic. And he is a very, very difficult rider to contend with because he does not do things that take himself out of the race. Yes, maybe you can mess with him, but he doesn't do a lot of self-damage once the first couple laps are over, especially if he's in good position.
Statistician Clinton, easy for me to say. Pretty obvious that the United States riders have won the most races in that class. I guess Japan now starting to move up in the rankings. But just tell us, probably not a surprise, what nation has the second most amount of 125 or now 250 class Supercross wins?
France. It's absolutely, I mean, not surprising, right? They've just had such great talent. It started back with Jean-Michel Bayle in the early 90s there. But Joe has added his name to the list, and I'm sure before the end of the season, we'll see more of it.
Yep, that's what he would like, to win some more. Australia is third, everyone. Probably not surprises there. Always good to see international talent. Always good to see you too, Clinton. We'll see you in San Diego.
Good to see you guys.
Oh, before we wrap this show, last chance to talk about the last chance qualifier, my favorite race usually of the evening. This one did not disappoint. Freddie Noren on the Mad Parts Cowie dominated up front, JT, but behind it, all sorts of chaos, including some big names.
Dylan Ferrandis made a unwise move trying to pass an arena cross regular on the outside. That's never going to be a good decision. He paid the ultimate price for it, had to watch the main event at A1, but then that battle late, Colt Nichols getting in there, battling with those privateers. And it truly is as close to like a war zone as we're going to get in Monster Energy Supercross. And we got everything we could ever want. Takeouts and the back and forth and the uncertainty. And then you have guys that we almost counted on being in the main event on the outside looking in for A1, and that's a story as old as time. You know, the unlikely heroes showing up in those LCQs, especially at the Open.
Yeah, and shout out to Malcolm Stewart. He was working his way through the minefield early, survived, got to the main, salvaged a 10th even after a big crash in the heat race. Never, do not watch the LCQs, and that includes this weekend. We're headed to San Diego, SuperMotocross World Championship and Monster Energy AMA Supercross. Racing will begin at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, you can watch on Peacock or outside the United States on the SMX Video Pass. Still lots of questions after round one. Maybe we get some answers this time at round two. Thanks for watching.